Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Coping with Crisis series. We are looking at depression, and we've been studying that. So, this is going to be part 3 in our series. And so, also, let me put out a disclaimer out there, especially when we're dealing with depression, because depression can not just simply be a thought process, but it's a chemical thing, and sometimes it's affecting our bodies in different ways. And so, we need a medical doctor. So, we're not trying to diagnose anybody. We're not offering prescriptive advice or substitute for your doctor or whatever, healthcare provider. Again, if you're taking medications or wishing to significantly change your lifestyle, we're advising you to consult your medical professional that has the appropriate expertise. We're just trying to bring it out into the light because most people don't realize they have depression. They just assume that this is the way they are, they're getting old, they're getting tired, or whatever it might be, and they just assume this is the way life is going to be, but they don't realize they're living in depression. And so we've been trying to bring that to light. So we've talked about how to identify possibly if there's depression going on. We've talked about some of the problems mentally that starts happening with people. And again, if you feel that you have depression, go see your doctor, go see a psychiatrist, go see a psychologist or whoever, because if it's a chemistry problem, then you have to be at that level. You're not going to be able to talk your way out of depression if it's a chemistry imbalance. So, that has to be evaluated. That has to be looked at by your doctor. But barring that, if it's not a chemistry problem, if it's not because of other medical conditions that are causing depression and things that that need to be solved medically, so let's just say barring all that, then it's just a biblical thought processing problem. Then that's what we can handle from biblical counseling. That's what we want to go after. So again, make sure you get the medical out of the way first, and then you move into the biblical thought processing. And this is a lot of the reasons why people are depressed, is because they don't biblically think right. They don't process what's happening to them currently. They don't process what happened to them in their past from a biblical perspective. And so their perceptions of reality get distorted. That's what starts happening to them. So, even today, if someone gets disappointing news, they will filter that in a non-biblical way. So, like, for instance, I teach prophecy a lot. There's a lot of disappointing things that are happening in the world, a lot of things that would disturb people, But at the same token, are we to interpret that as and get depressed and crawl up in a ball in the fetal position and say, "Woe is me, the sky is falling"? No, that's not what the Bible would say. The Bible would say, as you see this is happening, and it is a negative thing, it was predicted by God. Therefore, you are to trust God more because what He says is happening. So we trust God more, and we look at it in a bittersweet way. Yes, we don't like to see our country go the way it's going, but there's nothing going to stop that if God has predicted that. So at the same time, God is accomplishing His goals. And at the same time, we're getting closer to seeing Jesus in the rapture. And so that's how you would biblically process that. But a lot of people don't. A lot of people say, "I just don't want to hear it. I just don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear anything negative." That's the person isolating from reality. And I understand you can't hear too much, but to totally tap out and say, "I just don't want to hear anything negative," well, that's because your biblical thought processing is not working right. You're not seeing things in the light of the Bible. I mean, think about this. The Apostle Paul definitely saw a lot of negative things in his life happen to him. He explains all the negative things. But again, he shows no signs of depression because he's processing things in the biblical way. He understands he's going to be persecuted. He understands he's going to have to endure, but that God will see him through it. You will never see Paul doing a poor me type of thing, or I'm a victim. He will not do that. He just says, "I keep pressing on." for the goal, for the prize. And so Paul is an incredible person who looked at things from a biblical standpoint, and it prevented his depression. Now, will the biblical characters, sometimes get into lulls and stuff? Yeah, you see Moses, you see David, and things of that nature, but they come back out of it. But depression, that's happening in people, stay in it because they can't process things from a biblical standpoint correctly. So, for instance, as long as we believe that we are victims, this is a big part of depression. As long as you believe you're a victim or I'm a victim, then we strip ourselves of responsibility, we strip ourselves of power, the power to change things, the power to make things happen, to get back on track, to do certain things. As long as you remain a victim, you can't make decisions because it's all set in stone, it's permanent now, and nothing's going to change. I'm damaged goods, my life is ruined, all this other nonsense. And when you become a victim, of course you're going to go into depression because you're locked in. You've made yourself your own prisoner. And there's no one to let you out. You're the one who holds the key. And if you're not willing to put the key in and take responsibility and get out of that jail you put yourself in, then there is where you will stay the rest of your life. And a lot of people have resigned to do that. They believe that victimhood and staying in that perpetual jail that they put themselves in protects them. Protects them from being responsible, protects them from ever taking another risk again, protects them from being burned, protects them from other people burning them, protects them from ever making a mistake again, and so they stay in their perpetual jail. Well, you stay in that perpetual jail, you will end up in serious depression. And it doesn't end well there. It becomes a full mental health problem at that point. So biblical thinking of how we see the world, really we're talking about a biblical worldview, is more important for overall health, physically and mental health, than anything else. How you see the world determines how you feel, how you physically feel, obviously, how you feel mentally. And unbiblical thinking will destroy your physical life, will destroy your mental life, your emotional life, because it's unbiblical. The path of the Bible leads to life. The path of the world, if you want to call it, leads to death. And those are the two paths. If you think biblically, it leads to life. If you don't think biblically, it leads to death. And again, it's not instantaneous death, it's a slow death. It's a slow death of losing relationships, losing your life, losing your physical ability. You notice that a lot of people who are in depression are most of the time sick. They get sick real easy. They always have an issue going on. I know certain people that I've known for almost 15 years. And because of their depression that they never get out of, they're constantly sick. Every time I turn around and talk to them, they're telling me that something else has gone wrong in their bodies. And they don't even realize that it's a spiritual problem that's causing the physical problems. Yes, they're having real physical problems, but their immune system is low because of their depression, and you just get sick more often because of depression. That's just the way it is. Your soul, your thinking affects your body. And so if you've noticed yourself, or if you've noticed even other people who are depressed, when they look at life, I want you to notice what they say about it. I want you to notice what you say about it. They'll say that, everything's bad. They can't find anything good. There's no hope in this life, obviously, and so they lose hope, which our hope is based on what Messiah promises us, but they lose all that hope because my life is ruined here, this is it. And so anything even positive that happens to them, anything that might be a blessing that God gives them, they don't even see it that way because their frame of reference is, well, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. It can't be good because I don't get anything good. Only these other people get things good in their life. I only just get bad. And so they never can actually be happy when blessing comes to them. And when bad things happen to them, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy for them, saying, see, the only thing I get in my life is bad. Here's another bad thing. It's another bad thing. And they continue to go down into the depths of depression because that's how they're looking at life. They never see anything else but negativity. Now, these people, because of that, become ultra critical of others. They become ultra critical of even their own life, and they become very judgmental because of that. Very judgmental, and they never can be satisfied. Have you ever been around a person that you can do like 100 things for them, but even if you did 101 things, it's still not going to satisfy them. They just need more and more and more. They never are satisfied with things. And so there's really no way to please them. You ever been around someone that there's no way to please them? That's a very depressed person because they can't even take the good things you do for them and say, hey, that's great, that's a blessing, thank you so much. They can't even do that because for them, it's never enough. Because in their world has to be perfect, and their world has to be ideal, which is impossible, but they live with that narrative, and that destroys any good that ever comes their way, any blessing that comes their way. So they're always depressed. It never meets up to standard. It's not perfect. And again, we're not trying to talk about having a kind of a Pollyannish type of outlook about life, that there's nothing wrong with life, and I'm just going to go dancing through the tulips as if nothing's happening. That's not reality either. The Joel Osteen type of Christianity is a fake Christianity. Christianity is real. Christianity accepts the reality as it is. And the way we're supposed to accept reality is this. There are good things and there are bad things. But you cannot do a black and white and say it's all bad. Joel Osteen, on the other hand, will say everything's all good and there's no bad. That's wrong. Both things are wrong. You have to acknowledge both good and bad in the world. You have to both acknowledge that good and bad exist in people and that they will disappoint you. And that's a hard reality for some people to accept. And that causes a lot of depression because they think that if they find the right person, they'll be perfect. And the longer you're with somebody, the more you realize they're not perfect. And they have a bad side to them, and they have good sides to them. They have good qualities and bad qualities. But they refuse to accept any bad quality, so they push them away. And they'll actually sabotage relationships. They just push them away because it's not perfect. And so perfection doesn't exist in this world. Only God is perfect, and He's creating a perfect world for us in the future, but not here. We're not in that world. But yet, people get depressed because it's not here. So if you go to what the Apostle Paul said to the Philippian church, and he said this in Philippians 4:8, he said basically to think on that which is true, that which is honest, that which is just, that which is pure. So what you're starting to see from the scriptures are you're not to just obsess about how evil the world is or how bad you were hurt or obsess about how much trauma you went through. We're not trying to say we deny it, but if you're obsessed on your trauma, you'll never do what he says to do in Philippians 4:8. Think about that things that are true. So think about your trauma. It is true that you had trauma, but what is also true is you're responsible for getting out of the trauma. You're responsible for rehabbing. That's the truth. And you're to think on that. So instead of dwelling on it and say, I'm a victim, I should say, what can I learn from this? What do I need to do to get past this? And then once I figure this out and the truth sets me free, how can I pass this on to someone else? That's how Paul wants you to think about things. And he wants to talk about honesty. He says, whatever's honest, think about those things. Okay, what does he mean by that? Well, think about all the things that happened in your life. Are you being honest with yourself? What do you mean? are you correctly perceiving what happened to you? So for instance, most people are not honest with themselves. So say something happens, their parents treated them bad and neglected them or whatever it was. Their parents got divorced or one of the parents ran out on them. You can sit there and not be honest with yourself and say this: these parents of mine did this maliciously to me. They hurt me on purpose. And therefore, you can build your whole life around that lie. Now, what they did do is affect you. There's no doubt about that. That's the truth. It did affect you, but they did not personally target you. Your parents were fighting, and that's what the issue was. They had nothing really to do with you. Were you caught in the crossfire? Yes. Did you get the shrapnel? Yes. But to sit there and think this was because of me is the height of pride, it's the height of arrogance, and it's you not being honest with yourself that this is what my parents did was not about me. It was about them being selfish and them not getting the proper marriage counseling and having the proper relational skills to work through their issues. But a lot of people take this to their grave and they don't see the truth about things. Now, yes, do people actually want to hurt you? Yes, there's situations where people actually want to hurt you and intentionally do hurt you. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. It does happen. But again, what would be the takeaway from that if you're going to be honest with yourself? Well, let's say a man hurt you, okay? And he intentionally wanted to hurt you. Would you be honest with yourself if you say, well then, because a man did this, then all men are like this? Because a lot of people live like that. All men will try to hurt you. That's the lie you believe. And so at that point, then, you're not being honest with yourself. To be honest would be, it's true, that guy did that to me, man. That's an evil dude. But there are other men out here that are not that way. There are other good guys. Yes, we reserve the right. There are bad guys out there. No doubt about that. And that would be an honest assessment of things. But to take that and say all men are bad would be you not being honest with yourself. And this is what Paul is trying to talk about when he says, think on these things. Put honesty on your situation. Put justice on your situation. Well, what do you mean? He says, think on what things are just. Okay, let's take that out. It's about justice, right? Things that are just. Well, you say, well, whatever happened to me wasn't just. That was wrong. Just true. But what will happen in God's paradigm about justice? Will that person get a bolt of lightning the minute they do something wrong? No, they won't. Why? Because the scriptures tell you that judgment is now being put off until the end. People are not getting their justice served to them from God immediately. Because if you read 2 Peter chapter 3, it says that he's not willing to any should perish, but all should come to repentance. And that's why judgment is delayed. But you're sitting there saying, I want justice right now. I want God to fire a lightning bolt and strike that person because I want some justice. And this is what they do. I will not forgive until I see the hand of God giving them justice. And then I'll forgive. So if you want to think about justice correctly, you have to understand the delay is at the end. That person will get justice. There's no doubt about that. But you have to wait for it. And you cannot then become unjust in your thinking of saying, well, I want it now. I demand that God gives them justice now. Because now you're off track. Now you're off the biblical ledge. And here's the deal. What will that cause? When you see this person skipping through life as if nothing has ever happened to them, you will become depressed. You'll become angry. And that's all you will do. You'll become bitter because you won't forgive. When you're forgiving, what it really means is that I'm giving the penalty phase to what that person did to me over to God. That God will enact the justice when he so desires on what that person did to me. That's what you're doing. So you're not letting the person off the hook. You're basically giving the justice over to God. And that's why Paul says that. Whatever is just, think on those things. What's just? Give it over to God, let God deal with it. Or how about pure? Whatever is pure, think on those things. Depressed people typically don't think pure. What do you mean by that? They don't act pure many times, because when they're in a depressed state, guess what happens? They're going to try to find other ways to get out of the depression by things that are not pure. They're going to try to escape the depression by getting into things that's going to defile them. And it could be a number of things. It could be over-the-counter prescription drugs that put them to sleep and they never want to wake up. It could be drugs. It could be alcohol. People who are depressed get into alcoholism, drug addictions. It could be into pornography. They get into a pornography addiction. They can't get out of it because they're depressed. It could be gaming. They play video games constantly all the time. That's a sign of depression if they're trying to escape into that reality. And again, so they're choosing things that are not pure per se because it's causing them to get addicted to stuff and coping with their depression. And so at the end of the day, Paul's saying, think on those things that are pure. Okay, what helps me get out of depression? The truth. The truth sets me free. So I should turn to the truth rather than to the things that make me feel good temporarily. And that's what a lot of people do. So that's why he's saying, think on these things that are pure. What's pure? What is the pure way to get out of it, of depression? Okay? The truth, right? And so that's the idea of why we say to study God's Word and to understand that you have to apply it to those particular issues. So if you know what your trauma is, if you know where your depression is centered on, well, I just don't like the way my life went. Okay, then fine. Let's identify it and then start working on that with the truth, because you're misperceiving reality. And that's what starts happening to people. And the Apostle Paul also says we have to be proactive in our thinking, because that's where the battleground's at. And so he mentions this in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, 4 through 6. He says, for our weapons of warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God for pulling down strongholds. And the strongholds he's referring to is wrong thoughts, wrong theology. Okay? And a lot of times he's talking about false theology, but that's what misperceiving reality is. It's a stronghold. It becomes a false reality, like a false teaching, right? Verse 5, casting down arguments. What arguments? Well, in the context, he's referring to false religions giving false arguments, right? But if you apply this personally, he's talking about casting down your own arguments of reality, of how you see things. And every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. So think about this. I mean, he's talking about how these false teachings exalt themselves, say that they know better than what the Bible says. But individually, that's what we do too. We start thinking that the way we're perceiving life is the correct version and not the biblical version. So we put ourselves above the biblical version, the knowledge of God. And we say, no, I know my situation. And then you start making exceptions for yourself. And you say, well, God says this, but I'm the exception to this. So you start actually exalting your position over Scripture. And I know we don't consciously do it, but we end up doing that. Because I know as a counselor, when I tell people, well, this is what God would have you do, and they'll say, I can't do that. I'm not going to do that. Okay, well, then you're exalting yourself against the knowledge of God when you say, I'm not going to do that. Because that's what the Scriptures say. So the person's telling you is that they know more than God. This is the way I cope with life, Brandon. This is the way I manage life. And you're not going to tear that away from me because this is how I cope with things. And I tell them, well, that's wrong. The Bible says that you shouldn't be using that or whatever to cope with life. And they say, it doesn't matter. This is the way I'm made. It's the way I'm doing things, and you're not going to change me. Okay, you're exalting yourself against the Word of God. And then he says, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. So all these thoughts that grow through my head, I need to jail them under the obedience of Christ. I need to submit them under the obedience of Christ. And what am I doing at that point? The crazy thoughts that come through my head that make me do and say and behave the way I do, I have to judge whether or not those thoughts are legitimate or a misperception of reality. So for instance, if you've got burned in life and you say, I just don't trust anybody, I'm supposed to take that thought captive. You don't trust anybody? I take that captive, I put it in the jail of the scriptures, and I weigh that thought to the scriptures, and I see whether or not it's biblical or not. Well, if it's not biblical, then I am to jettison that out of my thinking and submit to the obedience of Christ of what scriptures say about that particular issue. And the obedience of Christ would say, what does he say about people? There are good people, there are wise people, there are fools, there are unbelievers, but there are also mature believers that do understand things and that you can trust. And so that's where the obedience of Christ comes into our thinking. It's into our thinking in this realm, because that's where the fight is. It's in our head. So basically then, we're not to entertain unbiblical thoughts because they can cause us to think unbiblical and act unbiblical. In counseling, you'll notice that people are obsessing about what someone did to them like 20, 30, 40 years ago. And they obsess about it. And it's like constantly thinking about it. And if you notice talking to people and they keep bringing up an issue, it's because their thoughts, they're allowing their thoughts to be compulsive on their trauma rather than on what God would do for them or what he wants to have happen in their life. And if you're sitting there and you can't get something out of your head, it's a running narrative, it's a running dialogue with yourself. Well, I wouldn't be in this situation if so-and-so didn't leave me. I wouldn't be in this situation if my wife didn't divorce me or cheat on me or whatever it was. I wouldn't be in this situation if my parents raised me different. And it's just constant. And the way you can tell is when you talk to them, they will keep bringing it up. Another way you can tell that someone's entertaining these thoughts is that you ever talk to somebody and it's not that they're empathizing or sympathizing by saying, yeah, I've been there too. It's that you tell them that you're having a problem, they listen, and they immediately turn it to them and start talking about their problem. Have you ever been in a situation like that? They're not willing to listen to you, they just want to get their problem on the table instead. That's a person who has compulsive thoughts about what happened to them, and they can't stop. So they'll let you talk a little bit, but then they come back in there with their stuff. That's not empathy, that's not sympathy. That's someone who is OCD about what happened to them because they have never got the truth to that situation. It's replaying in their mind, and every conversation will come back to them how bad they were burned or whatnot. That's a person that's going into depression, by the way. So I want to stop there and conclude with this. We will go next time into how to, again, identify these misplaced thoughts, this misperception of reality, how we go into the truth setting us free, how we stop obsessing, and how do we really replace these unbiblical thoughts with the truth? How do we do that? And how do we stop rewarding ourselves from what we get from depression? I know that sounds crazy. You actually will get a reward from depression. And that's why a lot of people stay in it. They don't like it, but they do like what some benefits it provides. And we'll talk about that. That has to be stopped. And so we'll talk about that next time. And so thank you for joining us. And we hope you catch us next time as we talk more about depression. And again, if you're having medical issues or whatnot, please go see your doctor about this first. Get that out of the way. And then you can talk about the biblical issues and the biblical thought processing that needs to happen. Anyway, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.